The word Reshmi means silky, and this is an appropriate description of the kebab that we are going to make today, which is the Reshmi kebab. I have half kilo of boneless chicken which I have cut into small cubes. To that I'm going to add 1 cup of hung curd, a teaspoon of garlic paste, a teaspoon of ginger paste, half a teaspoon of pepper powder, half a teaspoon of garam masala powder. I prefer to have the garam masala in this particular recipe. This is optional. To this I'm going to add cashew nut and almond paste, which is about half a cup. So I had taken 1/4 cup of almonds and 1/4 cup of cashew nuts, soaked it and then made it into a fine paste. And now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of fresh cream. Now you know why this tikka is going to be nice and silky, because of the rich ingredients that we have added to this. And I'm going to add salt, half a lemon juice. I'm going to mix all this together really well, and I'm going to let it marinate for minimum an hour. The longer you marinate, the better your Reshmi kebab is going to taste. I'm now just going to refrigerate it for an hour. It's been an hour. We had left the chicken to get marinated. Now let's cook this. Here I have a few bell peppers which I'm going to dice. I'm going to dice an onion as well. And I'm just going to open up these layers of onion. I have these few wooden skewers and I'm going to just skewer the chicken on it. Keep a little distance between each piece of meat and vegetables. I have a grill pan here which I have heated up. I'm going to just pour a tablespoon of oil on it and a little butter, maybe 1 teaspoon of butter. And I'm just going to place this onto the grill pan. You can grill this in an oven or you can simply barbecue it in a tandoor. The flame is on a low, and now after 5 minutes I'm going to turn the kebabs and cook them slowly and evenly on all the sides. The reason why these kebabs are called Reshmi kebabs is because of its smooth, silky texture. We've been grilling this for the last 10 minutes. I'm just going to baste this with very little butter. We've cooked our Reshmi kebabs evenly on all sides for almost 20 to 25 minutes, and these are done. I'm just going to remove them on a serving platter. I'm just going to sprinkle some chaat masala on this. These Reshmi kebabs are ready to be served. They go very well as a party starter. So do try this recipe and let me know.
Hyderabad, the land of Nizams, is often synonymous to its world-famous biryanis. But trust me, Hyderabad is not just known for its biryanis, but a lot more beyond that. Well, on that note today, I'm making yet another Hyderabadi specialty called Luqmi, and this recipe is dedicated to Sunrisers Hyderabad. Let's begin. Well, Luqmi for the uninitiated is a deep fried pastry often filled with a variety of fillings. Today, I'm going to fill keema or goat meat in that. But first things first, let's first make the pastry or the varki puff. What I've taken is, in a deep bowl, some flour, some refined flour or maida. To this, I'm going to add in some salted butter. Along with this, some salt, and rub this till you get kind of a short crust, crumbly texture. Once this kind of just starts forming together, we start adding in a little water and knead this into a medium stiff dough. A medium stiff dough is kneaded and ready. The next step is to cover this and give it a rest for a minimum of 15 minutes. While the Luqmi dough is resting, let's quickly make the filling without wasting any time. For this, I'm going to heat a wok and just add in little oil. Because it's a stuffing and because it also has a meat which has fat by default, the oil quantity is going to be lesser. Let's add in some red onions and kind of begin to saute this. Because Luqmi is a fried specialty, the filling deliberately should have lesser oil, otherwise this ends up becoming extremely oily. Once the onions are kind of sauteed, let's add in some green chilies. Saute this well. And next I'm going to add in paste of ginger and garlic. We need to cook this till the raw flavor of ginger and garlic kind of goes away. Let's add in the minced meat, and I personally prefer hand-cut minced meat for this recipe. It's important to cook this minced meat on high flame because initially this meat is going to release a lot of moisture, which is important for this filling. Of course, we are going to dry it off, that's a different story, but the moisture is very important. Time to add in some spices. The first one of all is some red chili powder, followed up with roasted coriander powder, roasted cumin powder, and finally garam masala powder. Give this a mix and continue cooking this on high flame. The meat is kind of just begun to cook. Time to add in some salt and add in two very critical flavors. The first one being coriander leaves, and the second one, of course, being lemon juice. I've been stir frying the meat for roughly around 15 minutes. Time is now to cover this and cook it further for 15 more minutes so that the meat is completely well cooked. And in the interim, let's move back to the dough. Dust some flour on the worktop, pat this well, and roll this into a thin rectangle. The next step is to laminate this pastry dough, and it's extremely simple. The first step is to take half the quantity of butter and spread this nice and thin, and this is actually soft butter, so it becomes easy and pliable. The next step is to sprinkle some refined flour on top of this and envelope this. Apply some extra flour and place this in the freezer for a minimum of 15 minutes. Time to repeat the same step yet again. The pastry is nice and chilled. Well, the steps kind of remain the same. You need to roll this into a thin rectangle sheet, yet again applying a little flour so that this does not stick on the work surface. Time to smear in the soft butter, followed by the refined flour, and one last step, which is enveloping this. With this, our Luqmi pastry is done and ready. This now goes again in the freezer for 15 minutes, and then let's see how the Luqmis are made. Our Luqmi pastry is frozen and ready. Let's move on to rolling this into a thin sheet and cutting these into squares or shapes as you desire. The next step is to trim the sides and divide this pastry into squares which are roughly 3 inches by 3 inches. The next step is to fill this with a tablespoon of the pre-cooked keema mixture. The next step, of course, is to seal this well, and for that I'm going to use water which is cold. We need to apply this on all the sides of the pastry square. The next step is to fold this lengthwise or breadthwise and join the opposite sides. The last step here is to use a fork and press it on the sides of the pastry, and there are two reasons why you would do this. The first reason is to create a nice design pattern on the sides and the edges, and the second reason is to just kind of hold it together. Similarly, let's make the rest of the lukhmis. Before frying these, one last piece of suggestion, and that is to again keep this in the freezer for precisely 10 minutes, and then you're ready to fry the delicious lukhmi. Time to fry these in hot oil, ensuring that you do not overcrowd the pan. With this, your Hyderabadi Lukhmi is done and ready. Well, I understand this is a time-consuming recipe, but trust me, keep these frozen, fry them when the match is just about to begin, and enjoy this sumptuous Hyderabadi Lukhmi. Hi guys, welcome to Get Curried. This is the Bombay chef Varun Inamdar, and what I get into your kitchen today is Keema Samosa, one of my most favorites in the world. So let's begin. I'm dividing the Keema Samosa recipe in 4 components. The first one is making the keema, second one is making the dough for the patti, the third one is making the samosa itself, and the fourth one is frying. So let's begin with the first one, which is the keema, for which I need some oil in a pan, and I'm going to heat this on moderate flame. I'm adding in some ghee because this is going to get the whole desiness out in the keema. Once this gets moderately hot, I'm adding in the onions. Just to hasten the cooking process, I'm adding in a little bit of salt so that the moisture of the onions is released and they get fried faster. Cook these on moderate flame. Once the onions turn light brown in color, I'll be adding in the mutton mince. Just make sure you break these clots and lumps and fry these nicely and evenly. This mixing of the keema needs to be done on a very high flame because you want the meat to be nicely seared. Now I'm adding in green chilies along with chopped tomatoes, red chili powder, turmeric, and garam masala. Stir this nicely. Once this gets half cooked, I'm adding in the green peas, which are pre-boiled. Along with this, fresh coriander leaves, fresh mint leaves, and fresh dill leaves. Give this a nice mix, and you have to cook this without water. Make sure you keep frying this because you need it to be nice and dry. So the keema here is well cooked now. Time is now to move this aside and let it cool down completely because you're going to fill the cooled mixture inside the dough. Let's move on to step 2, which is making the dough. For that, I have refined flour in a bowl. I'm adding in semolina, salt, caster sugar. You can also take grain sugar, which can be ground further, baking soda, and ghee. Ghee in this recipe is used like a shortening. Well, shortening is what you hear words like khasta or crisp, while ghee adds on to that when it converts into a breadcrumb-like mixture, like we're just working on this. Once this converts into a breadcrumb-like mixture, I'll be adding in the water. I'm going to knead this in a stiff yet a very smooth dough, for which I'm now going to take this on a tabletop and continue kneading this. This has been somewhere around 8 to 9 minutes. I'm massaging this dough. It's a nice stiff dough, yet it's very smooth. Now is the time. This dough needs rest for around 12 to 15 minutes, under a damp cloth. Our dough is ready, the keema is also cooked and nicely cooled. Now moving on to step 3, which is making the samosas. So just giving it another round of a kneading, and simultaneously I'm going to roll this into a long cylinder. Now why into a cylinder? Because it becomes easier to portion the patti of the samosas. So here I have this long cylinder. I'm going to cut this right in the center and then keep dividing this into 2s. So here we have equal portions. I'm knocking them back in the bowl and cover them under the same damp cloth. I'm taking the first dough, apply a little bit of oil on the board and roll this into a round initially. Once this is turned into a nice round, I'm going to pull this so that it becomes a little elongated. Well, if you notice, I'm not using any flour. I'm just rolling this with the help of a little bit of oil. So once it is ready till this stage, I'm going to cut this right in the center. I'm taking the first part of this, applying water on all the sides. And now I'm going to convert this into a little bit of a cone, something like this. So here you have this cavity which is going to be filled with the keema mixture. So here I have this keema which is nicely cooled now. I'm adding in. Remember, we added water which is now going to act like glue. So all we have to do is press it so that it nicely holds together and it nicely kind of gets pasted. So here, this has to sit comfortably right at its seat. As samosas are ready, I'm going to cover this under a damp cloth and rest this for 10 minutes in a refrigerator. So see you soon. The Keema Samosa is nice and chilled. Now let's move on to the step 4, which is frying these. Now if you see, this oil is not hot at all. It is just low to moderately hot. If you see these bubbles that are coming in, that's exactly the temperature that you want the oil to be at. And I'm going to overcrowd this oil because I do not want the temperature of the oil to rise. And we need to keep turning these. So as soon as these go in, just after 30-40 seconds, just start turning these so that they evenly become brown. Samosa is ready. I'm transferring the samosas on an absorbent paper so that all the excess oil gets absorbed onto that. The Keema samosas are absolutely done and ready. These are cocktail size samosas. Well, you can also make the bigger ones. Do not forget. This is the Bombay chef, Varun and Namdar. Wait for what next I get into your kitchen. By the way, the detailed measurements are there in the description box below. Follow them with precision. Hello everyone, this is the Bombay chef Varun Namdar and welcome to Get Curried. Well, I bring world cuisine to your kitchen. Today it's Kashmiri Yakhni Pulao. So Yakhni Pulao for the uninitiated is basically a meat pulao from Kashmir. The first thing I do is start prepping the meat, for which I'm taking half an onion and I'm actually slicing it. So I'm slicing it really very thinly. Well, the next that I'm using is some sliced ginger. So I'm just cutting it really very finely, something like this. Well, you can also bash it up. You can also put in some paste if you wish, but I prefer the bite that this gives to the pulao. Next, what I'm doing is I have some beautiful meat here. I'm adding in a little bit of salt to it. Here it goes, giving it a light mix, and this goes straight in the pressure pan. Now, basically, I'm using a pressure pan so that things just kind of hasten up. But nevertheless, you can put it in a pan, put some water and keep it to boil. I'm putting in the onion and ginger. Next, I'm adding in like a cup full of water. Here it goes. And finally, this goes under pressure, 4 whistles. We'll begin with 4. Let's wait for that. Let's wait and watch. Let's begin with prepping the vegetables. Well, in the original recipe of Yakhni Pulao, you do not have vegetables because it's a very dominant meat recipe. But I love vegetables. So I have some peeled carrots here. I have some peas which I have shelled and kept here. So they're right here. Well, I'm also using in some potatoes with the skin on. Well, the choice is yours. You can peel it and use. But I love using potatoes with the skin because it just adds into the nutrients. So here we are ready. Now it's been a few whistles. I'm just moving the meat aside. I'll be opening it once the pressure has settled. In the interim, let's begin with the rice. So here I go. A little bit of oil in this pan. The first thing that goes in is a big pinch of garam masala. If you notice, I'm not using whole spices because whole spices unnecessarily change the mouthfeel. I'm adding in all the vegetables, peas, carrots, potatoes, a few spoons of beaten curds, and I'm just giving it like a quick mix. So while this is cooking, let's quickly check the meat. Here it goes. The pressure is also settled. Here comes the meat. Well, if you see these beautiful chunks of meat, they're almost done. So now all of this goes in the vegetables. Make sure you scrape in all the onions and ginger. A nice stir. Now that the meat has gone in, what is actually ready is another beautiful Kashmiri recipe called a yakhni. So a little bit of salt and the beautiful yakhni is ready. And then we move on to yakhni pulao. Make sure you add in less salt because you've already added salt in the recipe. So here it goes. I'm quickly going to taste for salt. Just perfect. Now what goes in is the rice. I have some beautiful long grain rice here, which I have soaked for some 20-25 minutes in cold water. A gentle stir here, making sure the rice grains do not break. And as soon as that's done, we put it on high flame till the water almost evaporates, and then we shall cover it. Now that you see the water is almost evaporated, now let's cover this and cook it for 10 minutes on very, very, very low flame. So here it goes, let it cook. Well, I think it's done. Let's put it off. Let's check this. So now that this is done, I'm just adding in a little bit of mint. So I have some fresh mint growing right here in my kitchen. So here is this beautiful mutton pulao ready. And now wait for what next the Bombay chef gets into your kitchen.
In the olden days, dhabas would serve rustic and authentic food to weary travelers. This time while I was traveling to Dalhousie, I had a halt at Amritsar and we decided to have a lovely sumptuous meal in one of the local dhabas. And to our astonishment, me and my friends were served with an amazing dish made with keema and mutton chunks, which was called the Rara Mutton. And this recipe I have to share with you. So today, let's make the Rara Mutton. To make this delicious Rara Mutton, let's heat 4 tablespoons of ghee. The ghee has melted. Let's add 2 bay leaves. And I'm going to add to this half a kg of mutton. And I'm going to saute this for 5 minutes on a high flame. The reason to fry this mutton on a high flame is that the juices and the moisture of the meat gets retained in the meat itself. To this, I'm going to add 250 grams of minced mutton. And I'm going to again saute this for 5 minutes. To this, I'm going to add 1-inch ginger that has been crushed. I'm going to add 12 pods of crushed garlic and just mix this well. Remember to keep the flame high at this point of time. Now I'm going to add 5 onions finely chopped. Mix this well. The onions have become translucent. Now we're going to add a garam masala which I have made using green cardamoms, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg and black peppercorns. I'm going to add this. Again, fry this for another 3 to 4 minutes. This recipe has a lot of frying at regular intervals. This is a must to make your dish really delicious. To this, I'm going to add 4 tomatoes finely chopped. And now again I'm going to fry this for another 5 minutes. To this, I'm going to add 1.5 tablespoons of chili powder, coriander seed powder, and I'm going to again saute this for another 5 minutes. We need to saute this till the tomatoes become nice and mushy. The flame is still on a high, and now I'm going to add 250 grams of yogurt. You can add normal curd also to this. Again saute this for another 5 minutes. To this, I'm going to add salt. Mix it well. Now I'm going to add a cup of water to this. Now I'm going to cover and cook this till the mutton is done. Put the flame on a medium and let it cook for 10 minutes. Basically, we pressure cook this mutton for 10 minutes. That's about 3 to 4 whistles. Now the pressure is released. Let's see if the mutton is cooked. This fragrance is awesome. Our mutton is ready. You can make this now in your own kitchen and relish it. Do try this recipe and let me know. For such tasty and interesting recipes, subscribe to Get Curried.
Hunger for runs on the field and their undying love for a classic Haleem. Well, you guessed it right. Today's recipe is dedicated to sunrisers of Hyderabad. Hey guys, this is Varun Inamdar and welcome to Indian Culinary League. Talking about Hyderabad, it'll be injustice if we do not refer to Haleem. Well, on that note, what is Haleem? It's a classic combination made with goat meat to take care of the cooking time or the preparation time of the meat and the dals, lentils and broken wheat rice and the things like that. I'm going to cook them both separately. The first thing is I'm going to use a pressure cooker, and into this I'm adding in very tender goat meat. Well, this is goat meat on the bone. I've cut them into relatively larger chunks. Well, traditionally, we always have to use meat which is on the bone. Do not get tempted to use boneless because you would terribly compromise on the flavor. To this, I'm adding in ginger and garlic paste. This is considered to be extremely difficult, but trust me, I'm going to make it absolutely simple for you to make and understand. I'm going to add in fried onions. I'm going to, of course, reserve a few for later. I'm going to add in green chilies. To this, I'm going to add in turmeric. Not too much, very little, because we do not want it to turn yellow in color. To this, the next ingredient is Shahi jeera or royal cumin, followed by cinnamon, using a stick of cinnamon. I'm not breaking this into finer pieces or smaller pieces because all this needs to be removed later. With this, I'm also using green cardamom whole. I'm using cloves whole. And another ingredient that I'm going to use, which is very indigenous to making a Haleem, that is kebab chini. Kebab chini, well, is also known as tailed pepper. If you do not get this, do not worry, there's no hassle. You can replace this with allspice, or you can add in some garam masala. Of course, nothing can match the flavor of kebab chini, but if you do not get, that does not mean you will not make it. To this, I'm adding in a cupful of water along with salt as required. I'm just adding like a teaspoon for now. We'll adjust it later. Let's give this a stir. And this now needs to cook till the meat is nice and tender. Let me shift this on the next burner. I'm going to take a wok here. And in this, I'm going to add in all the lentils and the barley, wheat and rice, lots of other things. Let's look at each one of them. I've taken broken wheat. Well, you can also take whole wheat. I've taken barley. To this, I'm also adding in chana dal, green gram, which is split, basmati rice or long grain rice for that nice flavor, red lentils or masoor dal, and finally, I'm using black gram split or urad dal. We need to wash all of these nicely and transfer to our wok. Well, if you have another pressure pan or another pressure cooker, you can also cook it in that till it's nice, soft and tender. To this, let's add in a cupful of water and cook this covered till it's nice, soft and tender. A mixture of barley, rice, wheat and the dals or the lentils is cooked and ready. It's become nice and mushy, and that's exactly how you want it. Well, let's turn this flame off. If you notice, the meat has also cooked. It's come down to room temperature. I'll transfer this in a strainer. Now the idea here is to get all this beautiful liquid, and we do not want any of the spices. While removing the spices, we could also start removing the bones, because that is also something that we are not looking at. When the meat becomes nice and soft, you will also notice that the bone marrow releases itself from the bone, and that is something that's going to add some nice flavor. Let's start removing the bones, the meat and the marrow. Let's keep all of these separately and secure. You may also wish to wait for some time, because this at this stage is going to be extremely hot. It's going to be a little tedious, but trust me, it's all going to be worth it by the end of it all. The cooked meat has been separated well. So here we have the meat stock, we have the boneless meat, we have the bones, we have the spices, and we have bone marrow. The next step now is to turn the flame on, and we're going to transfer the boneless meat along with the bone marrow. These two need to be nicely mixed. You could add in half a cup of water, but before adding that, the next crucial step is to mash this using either a potato masher or a wooden mallet. Well, since I have an iron pan or an iron wok, it's easier for me to mash it using a potato masher. If you do not have that, you could use a wooden spoon and just mash it. The idea to mash this is to give the Haleem its signature texture, and that is the shreds of boneless meat. While doing this, I'm also going to add in desi ghee, and the quantity is quite a bit. So to this, let's add in half a cup of ghee. All this while, ensure that the flame is nice and low, because the Haleem, because of all the starch in the lentils and the rice and the wheat, it kind of becomes extra starchy, extra creamy, and starts sticking to the bottom or the sides of the pan. Continue mashing till the meat has fragmented into little pieces and further down into single strand fibers. The next ingredient that goes in is again extremely critical, and that is fried onions. We're going to deliberately add them at this stage because you want them to kind of melt away in the Haleem. I'm just keeping a little aside for garnish. Continue mashing. The meat has mashed perfectly well. Let's add in the meat stock, because that's where the real flavor is. Let's mix all of this perfectly well. This mixing is going to be a little tedious, because remember the fact that the Haleem is loaded with ghee, and what you've added is liquid. Make sure you keep scraping the sides, scraping the bottoms, because the Haleem has become nice and creamy, and you do not want your hard work to get stuck onto the pan. Mix this well. Final few steps. The first one and the most critical one is checking for salt. If that's ready, your Haleem is kind of ready. But trust me, I like taking things to the next level. Well, for that, I'll add in some meetha itr or attar. This is optional. You can choose to add, choose to avoid. That's a complete personal choice. And another ingredient that you can choose to add or avoid are rose petals in dried or fresh form. You can add them earlier so they kind of mix and gel with the fibers of the meat and the dals, the lentils, the barley, wheat and the rice. One final mix and your Haleem is ready. Here's wishing unlimited success and overflowing Haleem to my friends and fans of Sunrisers of Hyderabad.
Hello darlings, today I'm going to make a traditional Punjabi Indian dessert. Now I say Punjabi Indian dessert, it's also made in a lot of other Indian households as well. It's rice pudding, also known as Kheer. And this rice pudding is totally different from what I was used to at school. This is warm, it's fragrant, it's got nuts in it, and usually it's made when there's a celebration. Diwali, Baisakhi, even the birth of a newborn. Let's get cracking, I'll show you how. Hob on. So here I have a litre of full fat milk. Don't use skimmed milk, don't use half fat. What's the point? Full fat. In it goes. So what we need to do, we need to wait for this to come to a boil and then we'll move on to the next step. Patience is a virtue. So now my milk has had one boil. I'll turn the gas down a little bit and into that I'm going to add my rice. This is about a third cup of basmati rice, which, I'll just let you know, I soaked for about 15-20 minutes and rinsed it thoroughly in running water. So in that goes. Now that the rice is in there, it's a matter of being patient. Stir it, and what I'm going to add into that, just for flavour, some cardamom pods, about 3 or 4. This gives it a lovely, fragrant, but keep it on a medium heat and keep stirring because you don't want the milk to burn and you don't want the rice to stick. We'll cook this for about 50 minutes to an hour until the rice is just giving way in your fingers. So, as you can see, the milk has reduced by half. I'm just going to show you the consistency of the rice and how it should look. So you can see that the milk has thickened, that the rice should be mashing like that. So as you're stirring, remember to keep scraping the sides down because that's where there's a flavour. Right, that's reduced nicely. We're almost there. So now it's time to add the sugar. Now I've got about 1/3 of a cup here. You can always add more if you like it sweet. Stir. And now some golden sultanas. These are lovely. Nice little plump babies, in they go. Stir. Give this about, I'd say, 2 minutes. It smells bloody delicious. So I'm going to put some almonds in. These I soaked overnight, peeled them, chopped them, perfect. Stick those in. In you go. So once you've added in the almonds, you can see that it's gone really thick. So this is the kind of texture you want. We'll turn the gas off. You want this nice dropping consistency. Not too runny, not too thick. Now we're going to put in some crushed pistachios. Sprinkle them in. As many as you like. I think that much should be cool. Oh, it's looking so pretty. And that's it, guys. I think I deserve a little taste. Oh, it smells lovely. Oh my God. Perfect. And a few little rose petals. Oh, that looks so pretty. And there you have it, my darlings, my delicious, fragrant rice pudding. Can't wait to tuck it in.
The moment you think of Hyderabad, the first thing that comes to any foodie's mind is Hyderabad's amazing array of food and cuisine. To me, as someone who's a follower of Indian cinema, I immediately start thinking of the movies that are shot in Hyderabad. For a simple example, Dawat-e-Ishq. Well, from that movie today, let's make Shahi Tukda. Hey guys, this is Barun Inamdar and welcome to yet another episode of Khana Pina or Cinema. This recipe of Shahi Tukda, of course, is going to be a little elaborate because it has 2-3 components, it has 2-3 parts. Let's begin with 2 of those parts. The first one, of course, is milk. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to use full fat milk. Keep this on a low to medium flame. Keep a wooden spoon or a spatula so that we can start stirring it intermittently. In the other pan, what I'm going to start making is the sugar syrup. For that, I'm going to take water and sugar. You can of course keep increasing or decreasing the quantity of sugar or water as you please. What I have taken in this case is equal quantities of sugar and water. We need to make a nice and flavorful syrup out of sugar and water, and for that we need to keep the syrup on medium to low flame and the sugar needs to start dissolving slowly and gradually. Make sure the color of the sugar does not change. To this, for some flavor, I'm going to add in strands of saffron and along with this, green cardamom. Let's lightly crush this. And also, if you can, just run a knife like so that the flavor becomes nice and intense. Add this straight into the syrup. While the syrup is getting made, also remember to keep an eye on the milk that is getting reduced. While I have used full fat milk, you could also use some cream or a combination of milk and cream. Well, if you notice, the syrup is done and ready. Let's turn the flame off and this can rest till then. While this is resting, let's move on to the third step, which is frying the pieces of bread. For frying, I'm adding desi ghee. Once the ghee heats up, we'll slide in slices of bread. Well, this is the same recipe that's also known as double ka meetha, where double in this case is actually the double roti or bread. Once the slices of bread are nicely fried golden brown in color on both sides, let's transfer this straight into sugar syrup. Let's also fry the remaining pieces of bread. Once these slices of bread are dipped in the syrup for somewhere around 30 seconds, let's transfer these on a plate. Similarly, let's dip the other slices of fried bread. And let's allow these also to steep in the syrup for 30 seconds. Now that most of our cooking processes are done, let's keep our concentration on the milk reduction. So let's bring it a little closer. And this is the right time to start adding in khoya like so. Stir this well and ensure that the khoya nicely dissolves in this reduced milk mixture. Remember to keep scraping the sides so that the milk does not start burning, especially on the sides and at the bottom. Our milk mixture has become nice, thick and well reduced. Let's sweeten this now. Well, in a commercial setup, generally, there's sugar syrup, fried bread and this rabdi mixture which is ready. But of course, they have the liberty to do that because they're doing that on a regular, constant basis, day in and day out. But since we may choose to make this once in a while, let's not waste this syrup. It's nice and flavorful. It's got the flavor of saffron and cardamom. And that's enough to flavor this reduced milk. Let's turn the flame on for one last time. And let's stir this constantly for precisely 2 minutes. With this, our sweetened rabdi is ready. Let's now move on to the assembly. Well, you would have seen various different types of Shahi Tukda. The most identifiable form is 3 triangles on a plate with rabdi, with some pistachios, with some nuts and some saffron. But there's also another type which is actually like a cake. So let's do that. For this, we need to layer slices of bread. Cut these absolutely carefully and place it like so. The next is to layer this with some rabdi. Not too much, just little. Just spread this like so. And this is now followed by the next layer. Let's alternate the layers of rabdi and bread. Let's move on to the last bit and let's pour in all of the rabdi. Let's level this nicely and evenly. Time to garnish our Shahi Tukda. The first one is Chandi ka work. This gives it a nice and of course a royal look. In this case, I'm using some cashew nuts, some pistachios and almonds. And finally, some fresh rose petals. Our Shahi Tukda has set well in the fridge for an hour. Let's cut it and serve. Do enjoy this flavor of love by making Shahi Tukda from the film Dawat-e-Ishq. If you've enjoyed watching this video, do not forget to like and share and subscribe to get Curried.